Let's jump right in. Somewhere in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, there is an Amish garden bed that literally hasn't been tilled in over 40 years. No rototiller has ever touched it. No bottle of chemical herbicide has ever been opened anywhere near it. And yet the soil is so dark and crumbly it looks exactly like fresh chocolate cake, and the weeds, basically non-existent. Meanwhile, so many of us wake up every spring to the exact same heartbreak, right? The crabgrass is back, the thistles are everywhere, and we're bracing ourselves for another agonizing season of pulling and spraying. In this explainer, we're going to dive into exactly how these Amish farmers naturally maintain perfectly weed-free, crumbly soil without a single drop of chemical herbicide and without ever firing up a tiller.
Today, we're dismantling everything you thought you knew about weeding. We're covering the great tilling deception, the cardboard revolution, the planting hole hack, nature's chemical warfare, and finally, the cleanup crew.
All right, Section 1, the Great Tilling Deception in the Hidden Seed Bank.
$34 billion. That's billion with a B. That is the size of the global herbicide market today, and yeah, it is still growing. This whole endless cycle of pulling and spraying fuels that massive industry. But here's the secret. That business model totally relies on managing your weeds just enough to keep you buying more bottles season after season, rather than actually solving the problem at its root. Because the real villain in your garden isn't a lack of spraying. Research from Michigan State University reveals a pretty shocking reality hiding beneath almost every garden. A single square foot of soil, an area no larger than a dinner plate, can hide up to 15,000 viable weed seeds, just sitting there, waiting. Scientists actually call this the weed seed bank. It's basically an underground reservoir of dormant seeds. And man, these seeds are incredibly patient. Some of them can literally survive for decades in total darkness. All they need to spring to life is a tiny bit of moisture and one brief flash of sunlight. So think about what's really happening every time you fire up that rototiller. You are reaching straight into this weed seed bank, scooping thousands of seeds right up into the sunlight and handing them exactly what they need to invade your garden. It's kind of like reaching into a bag of 10,000 lottery tickets where the weeds always win. And the damage goes way beyond just waking up those weeds. Soil biologist Dr. Elaine Ingham explains that healthy soil is actually a massive living network, a complete soil food web. But when you till, you violently shred this underground biological city. You completely crush the natural adhesives that keep your soil spongy, turning what should be rich, aerated earth into something that literally bakes into rock-hard clay by midsummer. No-till soil, on the other hand, keeps all this delicate plumbing totally intact.
So what exactly are you destroying with that tiller? Arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi. I know, big word. But basically, these are microscopic fungal highways. They attach directly to plant roots to help them access deep water and minerals way beyond their normal reach. They also produce this amazing biological adhesive called glomalin that keeps the soil clumped and hydrated. When the tiller tears up these vital fungi, that natural plumbing system is shattered, leaving your plants incredibly thirsty.
Let's move to Section 2, the cardboard revolution and rebuilding the forest. Okay, so if we are retiring the tiller for good, how do we start a new bed? Amish gardeners use a radically simple alternative that perfectly mimics the continuous protective blanket of an undisturbed forest floor. Here is the exact step-by-step process. First, cut your existing vegetation down low and water it deeply to wake up that soil biology. Second, lay down plain brown corrugated cardboard. Definitely make sure to take all the tape off and ensure those edges overlap by at least 4 to 6 inches. That overlap is absolutely crucial so weeds can't find any hairline gaps. Third, pile on 2 to 4 inches of compost and organic mulch right on top. And finally, just cut an X in the cardboard to plant your transplants right away. Boom, you've just created an impenetrable barrier that shuts down that weed seed bank instantly. Now, you might be asking, why cardboard instead of that black plastic landscape fabric they sell at every hardware store? Well, unlike plastic fabric that stays there forever and slowly suffocates the earth, completely opaque cardboard blocks 100% of the sunlight, killing those existing weeds in the dark. But it also acts as an earthworm dinner bell. The decaying cellulose is an irresistible food source that draws aerating earthworms straight to the surface. They tunnel through and leave behind nutrient-dense worm castings, all before the cardboard completely biodegrades back into the earth.
Which brings us to Section 3, the planting hole hack and unstoppable growth.
All right, now that the weeds are completely smothered from the top down, let's zoom in on a really clever chemistry hack to make sure your newly planted crops reach their absolute maximum growing potential. Have you ever had a plant just stubbornly sit in neutral? It's not growing, even though you know you fertilized it? We call this the padlocked pantry. When your soil's pH is out of balance, the nutrients are physically sitting right there in the dirt, but they are chemically locked away from hungry plant roots. Heavy, repeated use of acidic amendments, like dumping lots of spent coffee grounds, can slowly nudge the soil toward acidity, locking up essential stuff like calcium and phosphorus. To fix this, Amish growers use a brilliant counterbalance: clean hardwood ash. But listen, here is where most people get it totally wrong. They just toss dry ash straight into the hole. If dry alkaline ash meets nitrogen-rich coffee grounds, it actually creates a reaction that releases harmful ammonia gas and scorches the roots. We definitely don't want that. Instead, use this really simple process. Steep 2 tablespoons of clean hardwood ash in a liter of water overnight. Put your loose coffee grounds into the planting hole, and then pour just a 1/4 cup of that diluted milky liquid ash right over the grounds. It gently neutralizes the acidity and safely unlocks all those trapped nutrients without any destructive chemical spikes. As Dr. Jerry Hatfield, the former director at the USDA, perfectly sums it up, when soil chemistry is properly balanced, the plant's own immune system functions at its peak. This simple 5-minute planting hole hack creates a biologically active pocket of soil that dramatically accelerates early growth. Plus, it builds a robust natural defense against pests and diseases that no chemical spray could ever match.
On to Section 4, Nature's Chemical Warfare and the Miracle of Cereal Rye.
So, the cardboard strategy handles the summer, but experienced growers never leave their garden totally bare in the winter. Nature hates bare soil. If you leave it empty, weeds are going to colonize it. Instead, traditional growers rely on a self-deploying defense system. They scatter a fall cover crop of cereal rye to take advantage of something called allelopathy. This is an incredible biological phenomenon where a living plant naturally manufactures and releases chemical compounds just to suppress the growth of competing plants around it. Researchers at Cornell and Penn State actually found that cereal rye roots quietly pump out natural weed-killing compounds called benzoaxazones all winter long.
Let's look at how this builds your garden's defenses. When you cut this rye down right at the base in early spring and leave it lying flat like a golden blanket, that decomposing mat effortlessly suppresses up to 95% of notorious invaders. We're talking crabgrass and pigweed for up to 60 days. That is near total weed suppression achieved entirely through the plant's very own natural chemistry.
Finally, Section 5, the cleanup crew and the nocturnal army.
But what about those tiny weed seeds sitting right on the surface, especially when you want to direct sow delicate seeds like carrots or lettuce that just can't push their way through a thick rye mat? Well, the Amish deploy a deviously clever 2-part cleanup strategy. The first part is the stale seedbed trap, and it works exactly like a trap. You prep and water the empty garden bed just like you were getting ready to plant, but then you walk away. You wait 7 to 10 days for thousands of those shallow weed seeds to get tricked into sprouting. Once those tiny green threads pop up, you take a sharp hoe and lightly scrape just the top ½ inch of the soil. You've just wiped out an entire generation of weeds before they establish, permanently reducing weed emergence by up to 70% for the whole season. And for the open spaces between your taller crop rows, we use the second part of the cleanup crew, the white Dutch clover triple threat. You just sow this low-growing clover directly between your rows. First, it acts as a living ground cover that physically chokes out weeds. Second, it pulls free nitrogen straight out of the atmosphere to feed your neighboring plants. And third, its blossoms attract hundreds of pollinating insects to seriously boost your vegetable yields.
And I've saved the coolest thing for last. This is a truly fascinating discovery from the research, the nocturnal beetle patrol. University studies show that leaving this natural mulch and living clover intact creates the absolute perfect habitat for common ground beetles. These little hard-shelled predators emerge at night while you're fast asleep, and they consume up to 65% of the weed seeds just resting on the soil surface. You literally have a quiet army of tiny allies patrolling your garden rows in the dark. By abandoning the plow, feeding the soil biology, and letting cover crops, earthworms, and beetles do all the heavy lifting, you're finally working with nature instead of destroying it. It's a completely free masterclass in building rich, vibrant soil that quite literally does the weeding for you. So now that you've seen the actual science behind the soil food web and the weed seed bank, are you finally ready to retire your tiller this spring?